Trying to determine who is the strongest character in One Piece may just be as hard as finding the legendary treasure itself. With dozens of characters fighting for this title, many of whom have only had a handful of appearances in the actual manga, we really don't have much to go on that would help us to find an answer to this age-old question. But despite the fact that we have now gone well past 1000 chapters, it has only been in recent weeks that some of the biggest players have started to make their move, with both Redhead Shanks and the marine hero Monkey D. Garp finally showcasing their impressive strength for the world to see. And since so many of you had seemed to enjoy my video taking a deep dive into just how strong the legendary Marine Vice Admiral Garp is, I thought that for today's video we should take a look into another one of the major players currently sailing the seas. Now admittedly, this doesn't exactly narrow things down, as the overlap between extremely strong characters and characters that we know little about is surprisingly large when it comes to One Piece. Even a brief moment of thought will bring up names like Monkey D. Dragon, the mysterious leader of the revolutionaries, and Luffy's very absent father. Then you've got Imsama, the apparent ruler of the world, and not to mention the Gorosei who he commands. You've got also the remnants of the Rocks pirates, many of which have yet to be revealed, and even Blackbeard himself, who is in fact a character that we've seen more of than any of the other characters that I've listed, but he still has numerous unexplained and unbelievably powerful abilities. While I do intend on making future videos investigating each of these characters if there is enough demand for it, but for today's video I want to start by discussing the strength behind one of the newly crowned emperors, none other than the world's strongest swordsman himself, Dracule Mihawk. Until recently, Mihawk was probably the strongest unaffiliated character in the entire One Piece world. He had no crew or responsibility outside of his now obsolete warlord status, and he appeared to have no goals. Despite this, he has for the entirety of the series held the much coveted title of the world's strongest swordsman. It was this status that led to his position as the ultimate goal for Roronoa Zoro, who of course aspires to defeat Mihawk in order to claim the title for himself. It was also this title that had allowed him to become Zoro's teacher, growing the Straw Hat into someone worthy enough to one day challenge him, while also granting him the strength to face the trials that the Straw Hat crew would go on to face within the new world. We know extremely little about Mihawk's past, though his character design takes clear influence from multiple sources. His appearance is clearly Spanish inspired, and you see a lot of religious imagery associated with him, including his crucifix shaped weapon. His home island is made up of Gothic style architecture, and his name and some other minor aspects of his character are obviously taken from the Lord of Darkness himself, Count Dracula. Whether if any of these are relevant to his character or simply aspects of his design is yet to be revealed. But what we do know about the man can tell us a lot about his strength. Mihawk has only had a minor number of feats revealed to us so far in the series, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But what we know about the world's strongest swordsman is entirely based upon his reputation and the opinions of others surrounding him. Naturally, the most significant part of Mihawk's reputation is exactly what we have known him for, being the world's strongest swordsman. And while this title seems self-explanatory, some further investigation is needed, namely what exactly classifies someone as a swordsman. For example, one of the most common debates that I've seen regarding this topic is that if Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, then that means that he must be stronger than Shanks, who also uses a sword, which is naturally a very contentious statement to make. But would that also mean that he was stronger than Whitebeard, who didn't use a conventional sword, but had still used a weapon that fell into the same category as Mihawk's, with them both being classified as supreme grade swords? Now if we follow this line of logic, would this mean that Big Mom was also a wielder of a sword? What about Kizaru, who used a sword made of light in his fight against Rayleigh? Now the distinction of what classifies someone as a swordsman is obviously very messy, but without answering this question, how can we judge just how impressive the world's greatest swordsman title actually is? Well, one metric that we can use to define a swordsman is based on Zoro's epic fight with Kaido's right-hand man, King the Wildfire. While their fight mainly utilized swords, Zoro announces during the fight that he doesn't consider King as a swordsman, seemingly due to his dishonorable actions. Throughout the fight, King would frequently use secondary forms of attacking outside of using his swords. Zoro's comment in particular came following a headbutt from King, though he also showed disdain when King had stolen Zoro's swords to prevent him from fighting at his full strength. From Zoro's reaction, it would seem that a true swordsman is someone whose strength is synonymous with their blade, and it is someone who only attacks either with or through their swords. And without their swords, they are pretty much nothing. By this definition, Mihawk would be the strongest person in the world with a sword, and a better swordsman than anyone else who wields a sword, but not necessarily stronger than other people who use a sword. It seems like this is something Mihawk himself also acknowledges all the way back at his first introduction, where he had outright told Luffy that his goal of becoming Pirate King is even more difficult than the goal of becoming the world's strongest swordsman. Now this could be Mihawk referencing the difficulty of locating all the poneglyphs and actually reaching Laugh Tale, but I on the other hand view it as him admitting that you would likely have to be even stronger than he is in order to be successful in becoming the Pirate King. But even outside of Mihawk's prestigious title of the world's strongest swordsman, there are a few other facets of the man's reputation that we have to consider. The first of which relates to another character whose monstrous strength has finally been revealed in recent weeks. Someone who Mihawk was supposedly equal to and had often fought against until he had lost his arm in the East Blue. This is none other than Redhead Shanks. And even Whitebeard had acknowledged how great their battles were when Shanks had visited the former Yonko. And with what we have just learnt about Shanks' strength following the defeat of both Kid and Killer in a singular attack, we can all imagine just how strong someone his equal would be. Though it is worth mentioning that Shanks had lost his arm over 12 years ago in the story, well before he had even reached the rank of Yonko, and that it is possible that his and Mihawk's strength may have diverged in that time. But despite this doesn't downplay the fact that the Marines fear Mihawk, and this was shown following the disbandment of the Warlord system. In one of the most epic moments in One Piece history, the Marines had launched simultaneous assaults on all of the former Warlords, with an entire fleet that was sent to arrest Mihawk. This may have been a comparable force to the one that was sent to Amazon Lily in order to take down Boa Hancock, but then it needs to be remembered that Mihawk has no crew. They had sent the same size force after the lone Mihawk that they did to take out an entire nation with Hancock at the helm. It's pretty evident that Mihawk is seen as a powerful player by the higher-ups within the Marines, and this was further demonstrated when Akainu had commented on Mihawk's decision to act at Marineford, where no other pirate caught the magma wielder's attention. Now the final point that I feel is worth mentioning before we take a look at Mihawk's feats within the series would be how he had mentored Zoro, which had allowed the Straw Hat to become as strong as he is today, and it showcases the unbelievable strength and skill that Mihawk must hold in order to elevate Zoro to such a level. While some of the points that I've spoken about only emphasize Mihawk's strength within the narrative, it can't be denied that his reputation in the series well establishes him as one of the strongest in the world, arguably equal to the Yonkos. And this is fitting now that he has become a leader within Cross Guild. He is pretty much on equal footing with the Redhead Pirates, Blackbeard Pirates, and even the Straw Hats. Now speaking about reputation alone isn't enough in regards to Mihawk's strength. In order to better understand the power that he holds, we need to look into what he has actually shown us within the series, which admittedly hasn't been much as of yet. Starting with the least impressive feat that he has done, we can look at Mihawk's introductory acts all the way back in the East Blue. We saw the aftermath of Don Creek's entire fleet being decimated by Mihawk shortly after entering the Grand Line, with his main ship only narrowly managing to escape the same fate. Mihawk had ended up pursuing Creek all the way to the Barati, where with a singular swipe he was able to cut his entire ship into two pieces. We have seen similar acts carried out since then, with Zoro himself cutting an entire ship in half in Shabondi following the reunion of the Straw Hat crew after the time skip. Speaking of Zoro, Mihawk also defeated the Straw Hat's right-hand man with extreme ease during the start of the series, while wielding only a pocket knife. Admittedly, this achievement is not too significant because these Straw Hats were only starting off and understandably were at their weakest at this point in the story. The next time that we see Mihawk attack in any way whatsoever is during the Marineford War, which is where we have seen most of Mihawk's incredible feats of power that have fueled fan speculations and theories for years. So we can start by talking about an attack that I feel is heavily underrated by the majority of the fanbase, which is his opening blow against Whitebeard. This attack was actually pretty incredible when you break it down, as it took Diamond Jozu, one of the strongest and arguably the most durable of all of the Whitebeard commanders, a great deal of effort in order to block a single unnamed attack that was sent by Mihawk from several kilometers away. Now if that could only be considered a single swing of his sword, it presents an exciting picture for what a serious attack from Mihawk would actually look like. We had seen a similar situation later on in the conflict where a casual swing from Mihawk had cut through the frozen tsunami armies surrounding Marineford. But while random attacks are interesting and sometimes useful to analyze, the true test of strength comes against other fighters. And the first person that we see Mihawk fight against at Marineford is Flower Swordsman Vista, the strongest sword wielder of the Whitebeard pirates. While I have often seen this fight used to downplay Mihawk's strength, I personally don't see it the same way. Vista's position likely places him as one of the top 10 swordsmen in the world, and he was one of the few people who had actually managed to wound Akainu during the Marineford War. The fact that he had managed to hold off Mihawk, at least temporarily during Marineford, is not a detriment to Mihawk's standing, but it's rather proof of how strong Vista is. He is not someone who should be capable of beating the world's strongest swordsman, and if the battle between Vista and Mihawk was carried all the way to its conclusion, then I would have no doubt that Mihawk would have defeated him. But he is without question strong enough to withstand Mihawk's attacks, if only for a short while. Looking at it, there are quite a few comparable fights within the series. Take for example Kaido's fight against the Scabbards in Wano. The Scabbards were able to wound Kaido, something only Kozuki Oden had ever achieved, and they had fought against the strongest creature in the world for a decent amount of time. And despite this, Kaido had still defeated them with relatively little difficulty. I would even argue that the Blackbeard versus Law fight was somewhat similar as well, though the gap between Law and Blackbeard is closer than the one between Vista and Mihawk. Now before we get completely sidetracked with power scaling, let's return to Marineford, as we do see more from Mihawk during this arc, like when he had a brief confrontation with Crocodile, who holds the swordsman off from attacking Luffy. Once again, this failed to evolve into a full-on fight, and the act of blocking one of Mihawk's attacks is something that we can expect from a character like Crocodile, the Desert King. Now this had marked the end of Mihawk's involvement within Marineford, as it was shortly afterwards that we had seen Shanks' epic arrival and Mihawk's departure. His reluctance to fight against Shanks is often used as a mark against Mihawk's strength, as is his unwillingness to fight against the other Yonko from the most recent chapter. I personally don't see this as fear on Mihawk's part though, as his ideology has well been established to be one that finds unnecessary fights unappealing. Likewise, his lack of interest in finding the One Piece easily explains his reluctance to fight against Shanks, Blackbeard, and even Luffy on Boogie's behalf. Since the time skip, we have seen almost nothing from Mihawk aside from the recent weeks, though we can only assume that will change as we enter the climax of the series. Aside from how he was able to escape from his island and defeat the marine fleet that was sent to attack him, the only other notable thing that he has done of recently is the establishment of Cross Guild, where he has teamed up with Crocodile and Buggy. It's going to be interesting to examine what Mihawk will do now in the future of the story. One thing is for certain, Oda is gonna pull back the veils on this mysterious swordsman's monstrous strength. But for now at least, we can take everything that we have covered in this video and use it to answer the question of just how strong the world's strongest swordsman is. Based on all the things that I've spoken about, there are a few things that we can say for certain. Firstly, Mihawk himself considered the title of Pirate King to be harder to achieve than that of the world's strongest swordsman, meaning that Goldie Roger in his prime, and therefore Monkey D. Garp in his prime, as well as Whitebeard and Rocks, are likely stronger than the current version of Mihawk, which would also hold true for anyone in the present timeline of the story that you believe to be on equal footing in terms of strength to the characters that I've listed. Mihawk was equal in strength with Shanks back when he had 2 arms. Now this means that he was equal to Shanks at least 12 years before the present timeline, when Shanks' bounty was 1 billion berries. Shanks didn't receive the title of Yonko until 6 years after that though, and it is possible that their strength had diverged at some point. However, Shanks' reaction when Mihawk had met up with him to inform him on Luffy's bounty suggests otherwise, as the Redhead Emperor clearly treated the other man as a potential threat. Mihawk and Crocodile are pretty much both strong enough to hold the title of Yonko, and this is especially impressive when you consider that we have yet to see anyone else of considerable strength within Cross Guild, meaning that the strength of Mihawk and Crocodile combined is viewed equal in threat to the other Yonko's entire crews. Now this point does come with the caveat of the recent Yonko declarations seemingly being influenced by Big News Morgans, as well as Cross Guild's marine bounty system being a significant threat to the world government, as Sengoku had discussed within chapter 1082. And finally, Zoro's ultimate goal in One Piece is to defeat Mihawk and to become the world's strongest swordsman. Mihawk must at least be comparable in strength to the first mate of the future Pirate King. We know how strong current Zoro is and can assume that he will get stronger before the end of the series, and by that point we can predict that Zoro will be at least marginally stronger than current Mihawk. Now with these 4 points that I've spoken about, I think that everyone will agree that as of right now at least, Mihawk is without question one of the top 10 strongest strongest characters in One Piece, and he may even be in the top 5. As I'd mentioned at the start of this video though, until we start to know about the multiple unknown but presumed to be strong characters in One Piece, creating a definitive ranking list on the strongest characters is virtually impossible. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments in regards to how strong you think Mihawk is. If there are other characters that you'd like me to power scale in a similar manner, then be sure to leave your suggestions in the comments also. If you enjoyed the video, then subscribe to the channel for all of my up-to-date One Piece content. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next One Piece video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.